So one more time, welcome to our webinar that is called Manual QA, Identify and Fill the Gaps in Your Testing Process. My name is Alessia. I'm Customer Success Manager at ZipRunner. And today I'm proud to announce that our speaker for this webinar is Dmitry Kostrykin from the Solved company. So today he'll share some useful and practical advice on how to improve your QA process. Hi, Dmitry.
Hi, Alessia. Thank you for this introduction. Before we start, probably a few words about myself. I hope everyone can see me.
Sorry. I just wanted to explain some rules. I will just take 1 minute of your time. Sorry for that. So before I give the floor to Dmitry, I just wanted to remind you that we'll have a recording. This meeting is being recorded, so you all will get the recording afterwards. And also, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So you're free to ask your questions to the chat. We'll try to answer them either during the webinar or Dmitry will answer them afterwards. And also one more thing that I wanted to ask you is to make sure that you're muted during the webinar. So just not to make sure that not to interrupt the speaker. Yeah. So I think this was all for my intro part. So Dmitry, please start.
Yeah, thank you. It was a false start from my end. So I suppose it's fine. Anyway, I hope everyone can see me well as can hear me well and can see the presentation which we are sharing. So just a few words about me. I have more than 6 years of experience in software testing. I'm working as a manual QA engineer. And in my day-to-day activities, I used to interact a lot with a bit less experienced QA engineers, junior testers, as well as interns. And I think I understand some common challenges and problems that these people might face during their day-to-day work. And our webinar will be intended for the same. So let's jump to the webinar's agenda. Today we have a lot to discuss and to uncover. We will touch base with you different practices, approaches in creating, organizing, structuring, and maintaining your test cases. A part of this, we will be discussing some advantages of peer review as a process of your SEO test process. And we also touch base some other good practices like shift left testing, SRE, and some more. We have a lot to discuss. We have a lot of slides, and please bear with me. I will be trying to talk in fast because we have a lot of information, and I would like to be mindful of time because we are limited in time as well. So hopefully this webinar will be useful for you, and you will be able to get a lot of useful information from our webinar. So without further ado, let's begin. And our first topic is related to writing practical test cases. In this first topic, I would like to showcase two various opposite approaches in writing test cases of different level of details. And the first approach is related to test cases of smoke, sanity, and MBA test types. I suppose most of you are pretty much familiar with what is smoke and sanity tests are. In short, smoke tests are focused to determine whether the system is stable enough to proceed with further testing. Those type of test cases are usually address basic questions like, does the application work? Do the user interface open, etc., etc. And the main difference between smoke and sanity tests is on the phase where when those test cases are being executed. Smoke tests are usually getting executed on the earlier phases when your application is, when you're getting the first builds and your application might be not very much stable. And sanity tests might be executed at the latest stage when you might be checking whether your application is still stable as it was before and it's not impacted by the previous minor changes. And the third type, I'm not sure whether most of you has heard this in the past, but it's also used, MBA, which stands for minimum business acceptance. And this type of test case stands for most crucial business crucial flows, without proper working of which it doesn't make much sense to use the application at all. So here is the example of such test case. And here we can see that it's very high level and it's simple. So here we are validating the account creation flow. And here we have to ensure that the happy pass scenario is passed successfully. We are not using very much details, very complex constructions here. We have to ensure that this test case is simple, independent from other preconditions. It's path to execute and don't have any complex scenarios. So in your project lifecycle, such kind of test cases like smoke and sanity must be running hundreds and dozens of times. So we have to ensure that we can quickly reuse and execute such test cases. The opposite approach, the opposite approach is related to another types of test cases. And here I would like to showcase regression and functional tests. Functional tests are focused on validating whether your application meets the functional specifications and acceptance criteria. And regression test cases are validating the same, but on later stage, when we have to ensure that your system is not negatively impacted by any new changes. In case of such test cases, we are not pretty much focused on the speed of execution. Here we have to ensure that we are covering full-fledged all possible details and on all flows of the application, and we have to ensure that we are not missing any details. In those types of test cases, we might use boundary values, equivalence classes, negative scenarios, different data sets, data flows, and data tables. So here is the example of such test case. As you can see, it's a bit bigger than the previous one. Actually, it's one test case, and because of lacking space on the slide, we had to split it into two parts. But as you can see here, we are having additional description with exact acceptance criteria, which are pasted from the, I suppose, user story. Apart of this, on the few steps, we are having data tables with different input preconditions. And also, we are repeating some steps, for example, step number 7 and 8, with slightly different conditions. We also have post conditions and preconditions. So we are ensuring here that we are covering as much as possible during this type of testing. So yeah, moving next. Third type of test cases, I would say it stands a bit separately, but again, we have it. It's a shared steps. So what is shared steps? Shared step is a specific type of test case which can be reused and inserted in the body of test cases, of default test cases, in order to optimize your effort. If you have to execute same set of steps during different validations, it doesn't make sense to write them again and again. So you might create only once a single shared step, which will contain all the necessary details, and then insert it into your test cases. And in case this functionality will be changed, you don't have to rework your all your test cases, which are having the same set of steps, but you just do it only once, and all your changes will appear in all the test cases which are using the shared step. On the screenshot, you can see the example of such shared step. Well, short summary on the first part, which we have already discussed. Based on your project timelines and based on the scope of testing, you might use each and every different approaches. If you're lacking time, you might execute only smoke tests. So when you're designing your tests, please make sure that your tests are fast to execute, clear, understandable, and they are covering full flow on the high level. The opposite approach is regression and functional tests. So if you have time to execute them, please make sure you include them into your test scope, and you are covering a lot of variations of your functionalities, and you're not missing anything with such types of test cases. If you have some duplicate steps which you might execute in different stages, you might make sure to avoid duplication of work and use shared steps instead. So that's, I would say, it. And we have already discussed the approaches, how we can build our test cases. And the next topic is related to effective organization of your test cases, how we can organize and structure your test documentation. And the first question that might arise is how to organize your test case tree structure, or how to organize your test suites. So simple answer that there is no one strict approach. So you have to determine the method which will suit your project and your needs best, which will be clear and understandable for you. So here are 3 examples of how your test tree can be organized. The first one is organization by functional areas, by functionality, or by areas of your application. Another approach in organizing your test case tree is by test level. We can remember the testing pyramid. So here we are using different levels of testing, and we can organize our test tree in the same way. And third approach is organizing by test type. We are pretty much aware that we have a lot of various testing types. So here we use 2 examples of various testing types. One is we are splitting by functional tests and non-functional tests, which can be UI, performance, load, etc. And another approach of splitting is by smoke or regression tests. You also can combine several methods of structuring together if this will fit your needs of your project. Once we have defined the proper structure of your test case tree, there might be also another approach of how you can bring additional value to your test cases. And here to our aid comes the defining of test case attributes. So attributes might be used when you need to specify some meta information on a test case level in order to find it properly, in order to categorize it properly as well. So on the screenshot, you can see various types of attributes like test level, test type, regression level, automation status, functional area, etc., etc. So here you can define what attributes bring value to your project, which can be useful for you in any way, and establish them and reuse them additionally. Once we have defined the proper structure of test case tree, and once we have defined the attributes which we will be using, then we can plan our test run properly. So what is test run? In simple words, like test run is a set of test cases which have to be executed on a given period of time by given or specific testers. So what are the factors which you have to consider while building your test run? First, and the most important, is related to scope of testing. So here you have to make sure that whatever functionality is being released and deployed to environment on which you will be doing your testing, you have written test cases for the same, and those test cases are included in your scope of testing. Next important thing is impact area. Here, a simple advice would be to discuss with developers if they are seeing that the latest changes might impact some other areas, and probably you have to include some additional validations to your test run as well. Other factors might be related to separate types of testing which should be potentially included, like performance, UI tests, accessibility, etc., etc. And also timelines and available resources. In order, if you want to meet the timelines, and if you don't want to overtime with the given test scope and number of test cases which you have planned. So short summary for whatever we have already discussed. So please make sure that your test case structure is clear, understandable, and it fits your specific needs and needs of your project. Parameters and additional values and attributes might be very useful for you and might bring valuable information for your test cases. So don't hesitate to use them as well. And once you have defined your additional attributes as well as proper test case tree structure, you should be able to easily build your test runs by searching by either test case tree or by simple various attributes of your test case. Having said that, I wanted to showcase the same practices using the ZBrunnr solution. This solution was kindly provided to me by its development team, and I wanted to showcase how we are using the same on this tool. So here you can see that we have specified the specific project for our webinar. And coming back to the first topic of test case, here you can see the example of simple test case, which is validating the account creation flow. So it has clear steps and expected results, no redundant information. It's simple and fast to execute. Another example, what we have discussed is regression test. So it contains much more information. The title is bigger, and we are validating the error handling flow here for account creation form fields. So here is how it looks like. A lot of information and also some specific properties. Here, how we have defined different layers and different trees of test suits. The first suit is built on test level. Another one is built based on various test types like functional or non-functional. Here is smoke regression, which we have already showcased. And here we are defining our test suite based on areas of functionalities. Apart of this, what we have already discussed is shared steps. So this is an example of simple shared step, which can be reused in different test cases. So we can create a simple test case and insert shared step from a selected test case here. It can be inserted at the end or just simply drag and drop and inserted at the beginning of your new test case. So coming back to our webinar, next topic is related to usage of templates and to unifying the test case layout. So why does it need, why it can be used and for what it can be used for? Generally, during your testing, you might have various phases on your project lifecycle, or you might have different projects which require having different sets of data or requiring different actions from you. Here, customization of your layout comes to your aid. So on the next slides, we will showcase 3 various examples of building your test case layout per various testing phases. And the first example is related to functional testing template. So functional testing template is focused and aimed to validate the individual features and functionalities based on given acceptance criteria. So as you can see on example, it's mostly the same what we have already discussed in previous topics. We have description, we have preconditions and postconditions, we have steps, and some custom attributes like site area, functionality, and priority, which might be useful for your functional testing. Another example of another template is end-to-end testing template. So end-to-end testing is a process of ensuring that the multiple systems are interacting together in an expected way, or multiple components of the same system are interacting in the same way. Or, for example, we can be validating how data is saved in the database. So in our specific example of our test case, we are validating that the data flows successfully from one system to another system. So here we don't use steps, we don't use some specific properties, but we have 2 separate scenarios specified for each of the systems. And we have also 2 separate statuses for each of the systems. So once this test case will be validated in both of the systems, it can be marked overall as passed, failed based on testing results. And the third example is related to user acceptance testing template, and user acceptance testing is focused mostly on validating your application by end users or by stakeholders of your application, so that they will be able to provide you some valuable feedback. In this case, such people in most of the cases are not proficient testing engineers. They might not be aware of some specific testing approaches and practices. So what we have to do here, we have to share with them as much useful information as they need. On our example, we are storing separately test data with some specific user data. Additionally, we are having a reference to documentation where they can check exact acceptance criteria. And also we are having a reference to designs. We don't have test steps here, but we have a high-level scenario mentioned in the description, so they can validate it from their perspective and provide the feedback. Short summary. Depending on the test phase and on your project needs, there might be various levels of information needed. So make sure you use all the needed attributes and levels of information which are actual and relevant for your specific test phase. If some information is redundant, I suppose it's obvious to remove this from your templates so that you will have only information that bring value to your test cases. Well, we have discussed the test case layout, and our next topic is related to another good practice of your manual QA, and it's peer review process. On the next slide, we will discuss who can do the peer review. Spoiler, it's not only manual QAs, and also we will discuss how peer review process can be established using a test management solution. So here we are. This is the list of people who can help you with peer review, and the most commonly used person who will do a peer review is obviously a QA engineer. So what QA engineers can do, so they can do a validation and review of any documentation which you have created. In terms of manual testing, this might be test cases, test plans, test strategies, and any other test artifacts. And your QA folks might be focused whether your documentation meets your QA standards, whether it covers all the necessary scenarios, and whether it's feasible and accurate. Next person who can help you with review is actually a developer. Developer might be focused on checking whether your QA documentation is technically accurate and whether it meets all the standards, whether it meets and covers all the functionalities which he has developed during the development phase. Another person who can do peer review is business analyst or functional analyst. So this person, I suppose, will be focused on reviewing whether your QA documentation is covering all the functional flows, all the scenarios, and whether it covers all the acceptance criteria which he has specified in his user story. And last but not least, it's product owner. Product owner might do a peer review from business perspective, so he might be focused whether your QA documentation meets the business needs. Well, we have discussed who can do peer review, and next topic is related to how we can establish a process of peer review process using a test management solution. So there are a lot of different ways how to establish it, and you can choose any which will suit your project needs best and which will be more suitable to your team members. But actually, there are multiple ways which we can advise you how to handle this on a test management system level. And first one is the simplest, like you might have an assignees on each and every test case. Once you have created your test case, you might reassign it to another person so that he will review it once it will be actually reassigned. Another approach is by having and use additional properties. For example, you can create a custom attribute which will be called review status, which will have several values in dropdown, like not reviewed, review in progress, and reviewed, and use the same. Another practice is related to having some dedicated suites which will contain only not reviewed test cases. Once those test cases will be reviewed, they will be moved from that specific suite to the final suite where it will be reused. Another approach, which is not the best one, but again, it's a possibility and it's a variant. You can just add specific wording in the title of your test cases, for example, not reviewed at the beginning of test case, and once test case will be reviewed, you can remove it from the title as well. Another few advices are related mostly to the same, to establishing additional properties, like labels or tags might be a simple line of text, simple string, so you can give some labels, or you can introduce a comments field, which might be a rich text multi-line field, and track your comments on the level of each and every test case. And the final way of handling is by establishing a Slack channel, which you can integrate with your test management solution. And once any new test case will be created, it will notification about the same will be populated in your Slack channel. You can invite in this channel any peers who will be involved in your peer review process, so they will get notified. Short summary. Actually and surely, not all team members will be willing to help you and not will have much desire to help you here. But if you will be able to communicate the benefits of following this process, I hope you will be able to mitigate the risk of missing any important details in your test documentation, as well as you might get some additional useful advice from your colleagues. Well, I hope you are still alive and not yet bored. So I would ask you to send some emojis in the chat, so I will see that you are following me and you're interested in the topic. And meanwhile, I will drink some water. Yeah, thank you. I see your reactions. Thank you so much. So yeah, let's proceed. Our next topic is related to improving the traceability of your test cases. And on the next slides, we will discuss what types of documentation can be mapped with your test cases and actually how this can be visualized on a test case level. So actually, what type of documents can be mapped and why? In order for our test cases to have a good level of traceability and to see what what our test cases are covering and on what they are focused, we might link them with different documentation. This can be user stories, which will specify and carry the exact acceptance criteria of those stories, and test case will be testing the same. Another potential document is designs, like design stories in Figma or InVision or any other apps. A part of this, you might have some architecture documents which will describe how your application works or how specific functionality works. And also you can have a reference to bug tickets. One note here that there are two opposite directions how bugs can be linked with your test cases. The most obvious one is when you are having a test run and you're executing some test cases and they are failing, and when you are seeing your bug. So this we will discuss on the next slide. But another approach and another possible chance is driven by the case when you might face some issue in production, and when this issue might be very critical for you, so you probably might want to mitigate it in future. So you might create a test case to validate this specific bug itself. In this case, it makes sense to have a reference from test case directly to a bug ticket. And actually, how we can visualize this on a test management level, on example of the Runner. Here are 3 examples of linking project documentation. You can set the entire URL. You can specify ticket ID. This might be useful for bug IDs or for user stories IDs. And using the specific markup language, you can also specify meaningful title for your link, so that it will be leading to a specific link, but will be clear for you where it goes. What we have partially covered in past is related to linking bugs and on a test run level. So in order for your initial goals to meet your final results, there might be a need to have the full-fledged linking of everything in one place, which will help you in most of the cases to see a clear picture of your test case execution status, as well as it will help you in your QA reporting process for sure. So On the slide, you can see the full-fledged flow, what can be linked. Initially, we might have some milestone, which is nothing but a number of, or a name of release, which you will have in future. This milestone might be linked with specific test run. And this test run will have a set of test cases, which will be executed. And based on execution of which, we might encounter some bugs, which will be linked to your test execution. So this is also a good practice in having everything linked together. So in order to not miss anything, to have a clear picture, and also if you are doing some reporting to your stakeholders on the project. Short summary, make sure you have most of your test cases linked to the original source requirements, and both of the above examples of mapping of project documentation to or bugs will with your test documentation will help you to maintain a good level of traceability, and also will give a more clear picture for your QA reporting, as I said before. Once we are moving closer, the level of difficulty of topics in our webinar increases, and on the next topic we will cover a variance of test configurations, environments, and variables, or in other words, how can we parameterize our test cases and why we might need this. So we have few topics in the one slide. So test configurations is nothing but a number and the combination of different operating systems, browsers, device types, which might be used by different customers, different users of your application in production. So in order to not to meet and not to face the pesticide defect when you are doing and when you're executing the same amount of test cases on the same configurations, on the same browser or device, you might not find the potential issues which might be reproducible only on some specific configurations. So what you might have to do here is you just might simply ask your business owner or someone from stakeholders to provide you what configurations, device types, browsers, OS versions are important for them. But the best approach will be to get the user statistics, based on which you will be able to prioritize your testing accordingly. Another topic of the same is environment. So environment simply, it's the place where you're exactly doing your testing. In past, I have met some situations when, for example, we had some specific test run and environment wasn't specified clearly where we have to do it. And this led for some our teammates to do the testing in the wrong place. So having environment mentioned on the test management level, on the level of test management system, will help you to ensure that you are doing your testing on the right place. And the last point is variables. Variables is actually a set of specific data which will be stored in separate place of your test management system in the form of key and value to store some specific testing data or some sensitive data, which later can be inserted in the body of any your test cases and reused. I will showcase the same during the second part of the burner demo, so we will come to this part a bit later if something is unclear for you. Short summary on the same. So please think about variations of test combinations your project require and actually list them for future use in order to avoid the pesticide effect. Make sure to use various configurations for each of your test runs and prioritize usage of your test configurations based on user statistics, if you have such. And also you might use mix and match approach when planning your test combinations and environments for your test runs. What does it mean? You might have some combination and you might execute this on one environment. And once you will get your code deployed to a high environment, and if you will have to execute same number of test cases again, you might use different combination for same set of steps, for same set of test cases. So having said that, let's jump to a demo in the planner and how we can use the same. So for each and every test template, we have specified separate project. So you can see how it's being built here. Just short recollection. This is an example of functional test case, which is having a lot of meta information and a lot of additional properties. Another example will be related to end-to-end, which is much more simple in terms of properties. We are not using here anything, but we use everything in the general tab. We have separate scenarios for each of the systems, and we have separate statuses for each of the systems additionally here. And the third example of template is actually user acceptance, where we are using test data as well as cross-linking to some project documentation. So we have discussed usage of various attributes on a test management system level. So let me quickly showcase where it can be configured. So we have test case field section, and this is a list of potential attributes which can be used on test case level, and we can create our own custom, which can be done of different types. We have date, dropdown, string, text, URI, and user data types. How these data types will be displayed, I will showcase you on this example. So date will be a simple dropdown with date values. This can be used for creation date or for execution date, for example. This is an example of dropdown attributes. This is a simple string text where we can specify anything. And this is a rich text multi-line field where we can specify and insert some images or tables or anything we want, or apply some styling. Also, we have a URI field where we can specify the link and specify the meaningful name to the link itself. And also we can assign our test cases by setting up the usernames. So we have also discussed test configurations, and for showcasing the same, let me just quickly come back to the webinar project where we have predefined some testing configurations. For example, for web application, we might use some configurations of desktop, mobile, and tablet. On desktop, we might use Safari, or we can add Chrome, and also same for mobile and tablet view. Apart of this, we have environments and variables. On our example, we are using test environment or development and also staging. And apart of this, we have a list of variables. We have a project level variable, which is storing some sensitive user data, which can be inserted on a test case level. But on example below, we are having a variable of the same name on the environment level. And in this case, this variable will override the project variable. So here, how our variables will look like on a test case level with a specific markup. It will showcase some specific user data. And here we have a secret, like password. So it can be reused on test cases level. Coming to test run section. Here we have an example of some specific test run, which is specified to be run, executed on specific configuration on stage environment. Sorry, there should be STG, some mistake. And this is linked to a specific milestone with new release. Here at how it looks like here. Here are the potential statuses and different statuses which can be used to, while you will be executing your test cases. So coming back to our webinar. Next topic is related to another good practice of your testing process. And this is actually related to shift left or early testing approaches and how it can help you and in your day-to-day work and how it can optimize your time. I suppose most of you have seen such kind of diagrams where it's clearly displayed that the cost of fixing an issue incrementally increases depending on stage when this issue was identified. There might be cases when some requirement was missed or some issue wasn't planned during the requirements gathering phase. And if requirements were not tested properly and these requirements were implemented, this might lead to hard situation for developer when you will observe this issue on late phase. So he will have to rework a lot. Or there might be another example when some potential architectural issue might be observed on the late phase, which will lead you to the failure of deadlines, not meeting the deadlines, which is not good at all for your project. So how this can be actually mitigated? Here are some strategies and advices which you might follow to implement shift left testing approach on your project. The first advice is related to testing the requirements. So here you have to make sure that you are testing, that you are involved in the requirements testing phase, and that if you have some brainstorming sessions within your team, you have to ensure that key team members are involved in the same sessions. So requirements and gathering and analysis at the earliest, when testing contribute there, can be useful and very cheap for your project. Another strategy and another advice is related to collaboration with your developers. So here you might ask your developers to do the round of dev review before they pass actually the version of code to QA, because in this approach, they will be focused on delivering good quality product. And if there will be some obvious issue, they will encounter it first, and they will be able to fix it faster. When you will be doing your testing, developer might be focused on creation of unit test cases, which will help to improve the level of quality in future as well. Another advice is related to checklist creation and usage of scenario-based approach. There might be a chance when some requirements might be missing, and developer have implemented some functionality in a bit other way than you have planned based on the given requirements. So here you might follow the approach when you create a high-level checklist, get the first chunk of implemented version of code, test it, and based on the your observation, you can then adapt your checklist into full-fledged test cases. You can rework them, or you can add the missing scenarios. And the last advice or strategy is to provide as early feedback as possible. So here, a good approach will be, for example, if your developers are implementing some complicated functionality or complicated feature, you might ask them to share with you their work by chunks. So once some part is developed, they can share with you for your feedback. Once you will test this, you might approve or decline with some issues and provide this feedback to your developer. So he will get it faster rather than you will wait for the final piece to be done. So
Dmitry, just a quick reminder that we have around 5 minutes before the Q&A session. So
yeah. Yep. We are close to completion. So this is an example of how checklist can be created on a test management system level. So the only mandatory field is title, so it can be done directly in TMS. And this comes to a principle in testing that testing is more efficient the earlier it's performed. So let's not waste time, and let's discuss the pros and cons of using various sources of storing your test documentation, because I'm pretty sure that most of the teams are still using Excel sheets or Wiki as the primary source of documentation. And I'm sure that this is fine for most of the teams. This is fine mostly for small teams and for simple projects. But there might be cases when your application, complexity of your application grows. You might have to implement the wheel, reinvent the wheel, because of lacking some functionalities in the Excel sheets. So here, test management solutions comes to our aid, but again, adopting a TMS might not be easy for someone. Still, you might face some challenges on the same. So here are some example of challenges, but actually each of these challenges is having its own mitigation and easing. So anything, I would say, is possible. Apart of those challenges, we have a huge list of huge number of benefits and advantages of using the test management solution. You will be flexible in building your test cases. You can implement your own templates, adapt your attributes, involve your team members, or if you want to secure your test data, any people who are not authorized to log in, access will be closed to such people. And simple and clear statement that for modern teams which want to meet the expectations of clients and which want to meet the expectations of speed of development and testing, this is actually a must-have solution for such kind of teams. So here is a short recap. What we have already discussed with you. So make sure that you design your test cases according to the type of testing they intended for, recollecting smoke, sanity, or functional regression test cases. And then choose the combination of the layout of your test case and the method of storing them that is optimal for your needs. Try to involve as many members of your team in peer review as possible. Parameterize your test runs in order to avoid the PCC defect. Use the full-fledged approach when you are creating your test runs, which will help you in your QA reporting. And finally, try to be as much involved on the earlier phases of development and testing as possible. So hopefully we are in time. Thank you everyone for participation and for your attention. If you have some questions, please do let me know. Oh, Alessia, you can help me here if we had already some questions in the chat. So, yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Dmitry, so much for such a presentation, such a great presentation, really. I'm sure that everyone has found something useful for their QA process. Yeah. So thank you again. So I guess we have around 10 minutes for a Q&A session. So in case you have any questions to Dmitry, please feel free to write them to the chat. And we'll try to answer them in the best way so that to help you, maybe you have some questions regarding your current QA process that you'd like to solve. Oh, I actually see one question from Eric. Can I recover deleted test cases or test run, for example, in ZBrunner?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you for this question. Actually, we have to distinguish test runs and the test cases because those are entities of different types. Talking about test cases, yes, for sure. So there is a trash bin in the Brunner, and once you will delete your test cases, they will get into the trash bin from which you can recover them back. In terms of test runs, they might be either closed or deleted without the possibility to reopen from trash deleted one. But in case you're closing your test run, you can just easily recreate it by creating the same configuration. So you will be using the same sort of test run in your test management solution. So there is a workaround, I would say.
Great, thank you. Oh, I see a question from Zina. Can this test management solution be integrated with automation? For example, we're currently using automation solution from ZBrunner, but we rely on another test management for test cases.
Yeah. Yep. I hope I can answer this question. So the simple answer is yes. There are separate solutions. Like one solution is for automation in ZBrunner, and another one is a solution for storing your test cases. But actually, you might choose any you want, or you might choose to have full-fledged test management system, which will include both storing of test cases and as well as automation. So if you have something related to it, you can do this as well because you're most familiar with the system than me.
Sure, yeah, Dmitry is right. So actually, these are two separate modules, but they can be integrated in one solution. So in case you're using automation, just reach out to our Zebrana team and we'll turn it on for you. Yeah, so that's definitely possible, and you'll be able to integrate these two systems really easily. So yeah. I hope I answered the question. So, any other questions?
Yes, thank you in the chat. Thank you as well for participating. Your time is valuable, so thank you for joining our webinar.
Yeah, so we have some more time for the questions. So in case you have anything to ask Dmitry about what we've discussed today, or maybe you have some other question regarding manual quality assurance. So Dmitry has really great experience in this field. Okay, so actually, I don't see any questions. So in case you have them, you can definitely reach out to our Zebrunner team. We'll send you a follow-up email. Each of you will get the recording of the system. Yes, sorry, of the webinar, yes. So thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Dmitry, for your time, for the presentation, for so many important information. And yeah, hope to see you all next time. I hope that's not our last webinar, so please feel free to stay with Zebrunner.